Caleb Morgan had his rifle up before the second knock finished. He hadn't heard a human voice on this mountain in 4 months. He opened the door, ready for trouble, and found something worse. An old woman barely standing, her coat so thin he could see her shaking from 3 feet away. Behind her, a younger woman had both arms around her, holding her up, not asking for pity, not explaining herself, just looking at him with eyes that said, "We have nowhere else to go." The old woman whispered 3 words. "Just one night." Caleb looked at them for a long moment. Then he lowered the rifle. Subscribe and stay all the way to the end. Drop a comment right now. What city are you watching from? I want to see how far this story travels. Caleb Morgan had not made a mistake in 9 years. He was precise about this. Not proud precise. Pride was for men who believed their choices were correct. Caleb made no such claim about his choices. What he believed was that his choices were survivable, which was a different standard entirely, and was in his assessment the only standard that mattered for a man living alone at the elevation he lived at. 9 years of manageable decisions. 9 years of no one depending on him and no one he could fail. 9 years of the particular freedom that exists inside a life stripped of everything except what you can control. The knock came at 11 o'clock on a November night. He almost didn't hear it. The wind off the upper mountain had been building since mid-afternoon. The specific kind of wind that came before serious snowfall. Not a howling wind, but a sustained one, low and constant and powerful enough to lean into when you went out. It had been covering sounds for hours, the cattle moving in the lower field, the particular creak of the north barn wall that told him the temperature had dropped past a certain point. He had been listening to it so long that it had become the room's ambient sound, the thing you stopped hearing, because it never stopped. But the knock came through it. He set down the rifle cleaning kit. He sat still for a moment. The knock came again. Not louder, more deliberate. The knock of someone who is not certain they will be heard, and is trying again rather than giving up. He picked up the rifle, not from fear, from the specific trained reflex of a man who has lived alone at the end of a road that nobody took for 9 years and understands that the only people who came this way without being invited were people who had a reason not to use the road. He opened the door. The wind came in immediately, the cold specific to high elevation in November, the kind that had intent. He saw the younger woman first because she was standing straighter. She was holding someone, and the effort of that was visible in every line of her body. The specific posture of a person who has been supporting another person's weight for long enough that it has become the position they're in, rather than something they're actively doing. Then he saw the old woman. She was wrapped in a coat that had been adequate in October and was no longer adequate now. Her hands were visible. She had gloves that had been useful once and had passed useful some time ago, and they were shaking with the fine, constant tremor of a body that has been cold for too long and is starting to move beyond cold into something more serious. Her face had the color of someone who was not entirely present, the color of someone conserving everything for the minimum requirement. She looked at him. Her eyes were clear. That was the thing he noticed. Everything else about her was in difficulty, and her eyes were completely clear. "Please," she said. The word came out in pieces, the cold breaking it. "I'm sick. I can't—" She stopped. "I can't walk anymore." She looked at him with the eyes of a woman who has been walking for a long time and has nothing left except the truth of what she is asking for. Caleb looked at the younger woman. She met his gaze without flinching. She was exhausted in a way that was beyond the physical. He could read it in the specific quality of her stillness, the stillness of someone who has made a decision that they are committed to, regardless of outcome, and have arrived at a place that is beyond the calculations of outcome. She was not begging. She was not performing. She was simply standing there in the cold, holding an old woman up and waiting to find out what happened next. "Just one night," the old woman said. Caleb looked at them for a moment. He thought about 9 years of manageable decisions. He lowered the rifle. "Get her inside," he said. The younger woman moved immediately, not with the relief of someone who has been given a gift, but with the efficiency of someone whose attention is entirely on the task. She got the old woman through the door with the practiced movement of someone who had been doing this for a while, navigating the doorframe and the step without asking for help. Caleb stepped aside. He closed the door. He put the rifle back where it belonged. "Put her by the stove," he said. "Not right against it, 6 inches away. If she's as cold as she looks, direct heat will—" "I know," the younger woman said. She already had the old woman in the chair nearest the stove positioned correctly. She was pulling the thin coat off and replacing it with a blanket from the arm of the chair. His blanket, which she had taken without asking which, under other circumstances, would have required a comment, but which was exactly the right thing to do. So he let it go. He went to the wood box. He put 2 more pieces on the fire, then a third. "My name is Emily," the younger woman said. She was not looking at him when she said it. She was checking the old woman's hands, rubbing them between her own. "This is my grandmother, Rose." Caleb looked at the old woman. Rose was looking at the fire with the expression of someone for whom the fire is currently the most important thing in the world. "How long have you been out?" he said. Emily looked up. "Since yesterday morning," she said. He stared at her. "On this mountain. We came up from the south side," she said. "We took the longer route." "Why?" he said. "The road from the valley is—" "We couldn't take the valley road," she said. She said it simply without explanation, and then looked back at her grandmother's hands. Caleb stood at the wood box and thought about what she had said. You could not take the valley road because someone was on the valley road, or because someone was watching the valley road, or because someone at the bottom of the valley road knew your direction, and the valley road would tell them exactly where you had gone. "Water," he said. Emily looked at him. "I need to warm water for her hands," he said. "Slow warming, not hot." "I know," Emily said. "There's a pot on the left side of the stove," he said. "I see it," she said. She moved to the stove and managed the pot with the efficiency of someone who is comfortable in kitchen conditions that are not comfortable. She did not ask where anything was. She looked for it, found it, used it. She did not thank him for the pot or the water or the wood or the blanket. She did not perform gratitude. She worked. He sat in the chair across the room and watched. He was trying to figure out what he was looking at. Rose warmed slowly, which was correct. Emily managed the process with the attention of someone who has done this before or has learned it from someone who did. She talked to Rose in a low, continuous voice, not words Caleb could entirely hear, but the tone of it, the specific rhythmic reassurance of someone keeping another person tethered to consciousness through voice contact while their body recalibrated. Rose was getting better, not well better. The shaking was slowing. The color was returning in the way of people coming back from the cold, which was not a steady progression, but a series of small advances. An hour in, Rose looked at Caleb. "You live up here alone," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," he said. "For a long time." 9 years, he said. She looked at him with those clear eyes. "That's a long time to stay away from people," she said. "It suits me," he said. "I'm sure it does," she said, and there was something in the way she said it that was not agreement. Emily looked at her grandmother with the specific expression of someone who is accustomed to their grandmother saying exactly what she thinks, and has developed a complex relationship with that quality. "Grandmother," she said. "I'm just making conversation," Rose said. She was already better. Her voice had more strength in it, the words coming complete rather than in pieces. "We are guests in this man's home. Conversation is appropriate." "His name is Caleb," Emily said. Rose looked at him. "Caleb," she said. "Thank you." He nodded. "You're welcome," he said. "I mean it," she said. "Not as a courtesy. I mean it specifically. You opened the door when you didn't have to. That is not a small thing." He looked at her. She held his gaze with the directness of a woman who has been alive long enough to have learned that being direct is more respectful than being polite. "I wasn't going to leave you in it," he said. "Some people would," she said. "I know," he said. The fire was good now. The cabin was warm, not the warmth of a well-heated house, but the warmth of a place that has been competently managed, which was enough. Outside, the wind had picked up in the way that meant the snow was close. He had checked before dark, and it was coming. The sky had the specific density of loaded clouds, at altitude clouds that have been collecting moisture for days, and are about to be finished collecting it. Emily came to stand near the window. "The snow," she said. "It'll be significant," he said, "tonight and through tomorrow." She looked at him. "You're telling us we can't leave tomorrow," she said. "I'm telling you the snow will be significant," he said. "What you do about that is your decision." She looked back at the window. "We need to keep moving," she said. Not to him, to herself, working through something. "Not in that," he said. "I know," she said. She turned back to her grandmother. Rose was watching her granddaughter with an expression that was complex. Not worry exactly. Something more experienced than worry. The expression of a person who loves someone and is watching them carry a weight and knows the weight is real and there is nothing to be done about the reality of it except keep watching. "Emily," Rose said. "I'm fine," Emily said. "I know you're fine," Rose said. "I'm not asking if you're fine. Sit down." Emily sat down, not in the chair she had placed Rose in the chair nearest to it, close enough to be present, not close enough to crowd. She sat with the particular posture of someone who has given themselves permission to stop moving for the moment, but has not given themselves permission to rest. Caleb looked at the two of them. He had spent 9 years not looking at people. He was finding that when you spent 9 years not looking at people and then looked, you saw things you would not have seen if you had been looking continuously. What he saw was this: a young woman who had been holding someone else up for long enough that she had forgotten what standing on her own felt like. And an old woman who saw that and was watching it, and was keeping track of it, and would address it when the time was right in the specific way of women of that generation who had figured out what mattered and what did not. He got up. He made food. Not elaborate food. He made food the way he made food, which was practical and sufficient. Beans from the pot that had been on the back of the stove since morning, dried meat that he had been managing through the winter cornbread from a batch he had made 2 days ago. He put it on the table and said nothing about it. Emily looked at the food. "You don't have to," she started. "I made too much anyway," he said. This was not true. He had made exactly the right amount for one person, which was what he always made. But she let it go, which told him she was tired enough to accept the fiction. They ate. Rose ate with the careful attention of someone who is aware that she is recovering and that recovery requires fuel. She was deliberate about it. She did not eat quickly. She ate methodically, the way a woman eats when she has learned that eating is not something to rush, because rushing doesn't actually get the food into your body faster, it just makes the experience worse. "Good beans," Rose said. "Thank you," Caleb said. "How long do you cook them?" Rose asked. He looked at her. "Since this morning," he said. "All day," she said. "When I'm here," he said. "Which is most days." "That's the right way," Rose said. She sounded satisfied. "Most people don't cook them long enough and then wonder why they're tough." Emily looked at her grandmother. "Are we discussing cooking right now?" she said. "We're having a meal," Rose said. "It's appropriate to discuss the food. It's good food." Emily pressed her lips together. "It is good," she said to Caleb. "Thank you." "You're welcome," he said. After the meal, Rose fell asleep in the chair near the fire with the completeness of someone who has been running on reserves for longer than they should have been and has finally been given permission by their body to stop. She went out quickly and deeply, her breathing evening out in the way of genuine sleep rather than the half-conscious drift of someone too cold or too distressed to fully rest. Emily watched her for a few minutes. Then she looked at Caleb. "She's been sick since before we left," she said. "The cold made it worse. She told me she was fine." "She didn't look fine," Caleb said. "No," Emily said. "She didn't. She said she was fine anyway." "Why?" Emily looked at her grandmother. "Because she knew I was worried," Emily said. "And she didn't want my worry to change the decision about what we were doing." She paused. She thought if I knew how sick she was, I'd try to find a different way. Would you have? He said. Emily was quiet for the moment. There wasn't a different way, she said. He looked at her. Who's after you? He said. She looked at him. He held her gaze. Nobody comes up this mountain in November, he said. Nobody takes the south route in this weather with an elderly sick woman, unless the alternative is worse. He paused. I'm not asking you to tell me your business. I'm asking you what I'm dealing with. Because if there's someone coming up behind you, I need to know that. She studied him. He waited. He had learned in 9 years of living alone that the correct response to someone making a decision about whether to trust you was to give them the space to make it. Pushing did not produce trust. It produced the performance of trust, which was worse than no trust, because it was also a lie. Victor Hale, she said. Caleb was very still. He had not heard that name in 3 years. He had not heard it in 3 years because he had arranged his life so that he did not hear names from the valley, which meant he did not go to the valley, and he did not have visitors from the valley, which had been entirely successful until approximately 2 hours ago. You know him, Emily said. She read it in his face, which told him his face had done something he didn't intend. I know of him, he said. Everyone knows of him, she said. Most people are afraid of him. What does he want? Caleb said. My grandmother's land, she said. She owns a piece of river property on the south edge of the valley. He's been trying to acquire it for 3 years. She won't sell. Why does he want it? Emily looked at her grandmother. Because whoever controls the river access controls the water supply for the South farms, she said. He already controls the north supply through the Henderson acquisition. If he gets the river property, he controls all of it. Caleb looked at the fire. He understood water access. He had grown up understanding water access, which in Wyoming Territory was the most fundamental form of power there was. Land without water was difficult. Land without water access was eventually uninhabitable. A man who controlled both the north supply and the south supply controlled whether every farm in the valley survived. What has he done to her? He said. Emily folded her hands in her lap. Her reputation first, she said. He started stories. That she was incompetent. That the land was neglected. That she couldn't manage her own affairs and should be in the care of family. That the property was a burden on the community. She paused. None of it was true, but he controls the newspaper, so it was printed. And he has an arrangement with the bank manager, so when she went in to do her normal business last spring, she was told that her account was being reviewed for irregularities. Were there irregularities? No, Emily said flatly. She has kept every record paid, every account documented, every transaction for 20 years. There were no irregularities, but the review put everything on hold for 4 months. She looked at the fire. During those 4 months, she couldn't buy supplies, couldn't pay the people who worked her property, couldn't do normal business. Most of the people who had worked for her needed to eat, so they found other arrangements. He starved her out, Caleb said. He tried to, Emily said. She is not easy to starve out, but then he had the legal status of her deed questioned. He filed a document with the county claiming that there was an error in the original registration, that the property boundaries were incorrectly recorded, and that the actual boundary put the river access on land that had been part of the Henderson purchase 3 years ago. Which he owns, Caleb said. Which he owns, Emily said. It's not true. We have the original deed. We have the original survey documentation. But the legal challenge put a hold on everything related to the property until the boundary could be reestablished, which apparently requires a surveyor, which apparently requires weeks to arrange, during which time she cannot transact lease or otherwise manage the property. Caleb looked at her. That's a sophisticated legal maneuver, he said. He has sophisticated lawyers, she said. He always has. She paused. 2 weeks ago, men came to the house. Not his men directly, men who work for a company he owns. They said they were there to assess the property. We hadn't been notified of any assessment. We told them they didn't have permission to be there. They said the legal challenge gave the county authority to assess disputed properties. That's not how it works, Caleb said. I know that, Emily said. They knew it too. They were there to scare her, and to give Victor a reason to say that we were obstructing a legitimate proceeding. She looked at her grandmother. The next morning, a neighbor came to warn us. She told us that she had overheard a conversation between two of Victor's men at the general store, that he was moving to have my grandmother declared incompetent to manage her affairs. Caleb looked at her. He can't do that on the basis of... He can file the petition, Emily said. He knows enough people with enough influence that the petition would be taken seriously, even without merit. And once the petition is filed, the property goes into a supervised trust until the matter is resolved. She paused. And he would control who managed the trust. Caleb was quiet. So you left, he said. We left, Emily said. We have the deed. We have the original survey. We have documentation of everything he has done to her over the past 3 years, every story that was false, every banking interference, every legal maneuver. She looked at him steadily. We need to get that documentation to the Territorial Land Office in Cheyenne. If we can file there, the matter comes under territorial rather than county jurisdiction, and Victor's county relationships can't manage it. Cheyenne is 2 weeks from here in good conditions, Caleb said. In November, I know, she said, with a sick, elderly woman. I know, she said. It may not be possible, he said. She looked at him with the expression he had seen at the door, the one beyond calculation, the one of someone who has committed to an attempt without being certain of the outcome. I know that too, she said, but it's the only thing that has a chance of working. Caleb looked at the fire. He was thinking about Victor Hale, about the specific quality of man that Victor Hale was the kind who understood that power in a small territory was a matter of controlling information resources and the specific vulnerabilities of the people around you. The kind who did not do things dramatically. The kind who filed papers and arranged reviews and started stories, who controlled the slow processes that most people did not pay attention to until the slow processes had already decided the outcome. He was thinking about the Territorial Land Office. He was thinking about roads in November. He was thinking about 9 years of manageable decisions. The document, he said. The deed and the documentation. Where is it? Emily looked at her grandmother's bag, which she had placed beside the chair when Rose fell asleep. In her bag, she said. She won't let it out of her possession. She has been carrying it since we left. Caleb looked at the bag. He thought about what it meant that an old woman had been carrying the evidence of 20 years of her life on her back across a mountain in November because there was no safe place to leave it. He has people watching the roads, he said. That's why you took the south route. We were told the valley road was being watched, Emily said. We don't know for certain, but the person who warned us thought it was likely. It is likely, Caleb said. She looked at him. How do you know? She said. Because I know how men like Victor Hale operate, he said. He doesn't do anything halfway. If he's filed papers and is moving toward a competency petition, he knows you might run. He would have watched the roads. Then we can't go back through the valley, she said. No, he said. And the north route to Cheyenne is not an option in November with someone who is ill, he said. She was very still. She had the expression of someone recalculating, not panicking, recalculating, running through what she knew and what she needed and where the gaps were. There's another way, Caleb said. She looked at him. He had not intended to say that. It came out because it was true, and because he had been thinking about it for the last 10 minutes while she talked, and the thinking had led him somewhere he had not planned to go. There's a route east, he said, over the secondary ridge. It comes out near the Garrison settlement. From Garrison, you can get to the main territorial road without going through Red Hollow Valley. He paused. It's not easy. The elevation on the secondary ridge is significant, and the route isn't maintained. But it can be done in November if the weather holds. Emily looked at him. You know this route, she said. I've ridden it, he said. When? 8 years ago, he said. Conditions were similar. She absorbed that. You're telling me this because you know a way to help us, she said. Not because you're sending us off with directions. He was quiet. She was perceptive. He was not sure how he felt about that. Your grandmother needs at least 2 days before she can travel, he said. The snow will keep for tonight and tomorrow at minimum. After that, we look at what we have. Emily heard the we. He heard the we too, which was unexpected since he had been alone for 9 years and the language of we had become foreign to him. He did not correct it. Why are you doing this? She said. He looked at the fire. You asked for 1 night, he said. 1 night I can do. She studied him. That's not an answer, she said. No, he said. It's not. He went to check the horses. He needed the air, and he needed the movement, and he needed the specific clarity of the outside at night that he had always used when the inside became too much, when the inside of his own head became something that required physical interruption. He stood in the dark beside his horse and thought about 9 years. He thought about the decision he had made 9 years ago, which had not been a decision made in fear, not exactly. It had been a decision made in the specific exhaustion that comes from being right about something, and being unable to make anyone see it. The exhaustion of a man who had tried to do the correct thing in a situation that had power on the wrong side, and had found that power on the wrong side was an extraordinary obstacle to the correct thing being acknowledged. He had left, rather than continue fighting a battle where the opponent could change the rules whenever it was losing. He was standing in the cold 9 years later, thinking about a woman in his cabin with a bag of documents that could expose a man who controlled a whole valley. He thought about the expression on Emily's face when she said, I know that too. Not defeat, just knowledge. The knowledge of someone who has looked at the odds and decided to proceed anyway. He went back inside. Rose was still sleeping. Emily was sitting in the chair beside her, not sleeping, watching the door. She watched him come in. He sat down. Tomorrow, he said. When your grandmother is rested enough to talk, I need to see the documents. Emily looked at him. Why? She said. Because I need to understand what you have, he said. What the documentation actually contains. Whether it's enough to do what you need it to do. He paused. I need to know what we're working with before I can tell you what the best route is. She held his gaze. You're not just going to point us toward Garrison, she said. He did not respond to that. Are you? She said. He looked at the fire. 9 years of manageable decisions. Get some sleep, he said. The other chair is there. Take the blanket from the chest. She did not argue. She did not thank him. She got the blanket from the chest and sat back in the chair and was asleep within 20 minutes, which told him she had been running considerably past her limit and had only been held up by the specific determination of someone who was not allowed to stop yet. He sat with the fire for a long time. He was thinking about Victor Hale. He was thinking about a woman who had walked onto his mountain asking for 1 night. He was thinking about the things he had walked away from 9 years ago, and whether walking away had been the right decision, or whether it had simply been the survivable one, and whether those were the same thing. He was not sure they were. He was not sure they were the same thing at all. He put another piece of wood on the fire and sat back and let the night move forward at its own pace, and outside the snow had begun soft and steady and serious. Covering the mountain in the specific silence of snowfall at altitude, a silence that was not empty but full. Full of everything that was about to happen. Whether he chose it or not, Rose was better in the morning, not well. Caleb had seen enough of illness in his years alone to understand the difference between a person who has recovered and a person who has stabilized, and Rose was the second thing. The color was back in her face, the shaking had stopped, and her eyes had the alert quality that they'd had even at the door the night before, that unsettling clearness that made you feel she was reading more than she was being shown. But she moved slowly, and when she stood to make her way to the table, she accepted Emily's hand, without the performance of not needing it, which told Caleb she was honest about her condition. He had coffee ready. Rose sat down and wrapped both hands around the cup and was quiet for a moment, not from weakness, but from the specific appreciation of someone who knows what they have. "Good coffee," she said. "I have time to make it properly," Caleb said. She looked at him over the cup. "9 years of time," she said. "Yes," he said. She nodded, accepting this without further commentary, which he appreciated. Emily brought food to the table and sat across from her grandmother, and the three of them ate in the functional quiet of people who have shared a night in close quarters and have moved past the awkwardness of strangers into the more practical arrangement of people managing a situation together. Caleb was aware of the shift. He was aware of it because he had spent 9 years without that shift occurring and recognized it immediately when it did. He was less certain what to do with the recognition. After the meal, Rose reached for the bag, not asking permission, not discussing it. She had clearly thought about this, had been thinking about it, he suspected, since she woke up, and possibly before she slept, and she had arrived at a decision and was implementing it with the directness of a woman who does not see the point of preamble. She set the bag on the table. She opened it. She did not reach inside yet. She looked at Caleb. "Emily tells me you know Victor Hale," she said. "I know of him," Caleb said. "I've never met him." "But you know what kind of man he is," Rose said. "Yes," he said. "How?" she said. He looked at her. The clear eyes were waiting. He had not intended to answer that question. He had spent 9 years not answering questions about himself, which was one of the advantages of not being around people who asked them. But there was something in Rose's manner. Not pressure, not manipulation, just the direct expectation of a woman who asked questions because she needed the answers and did not see the point of asking questions. She didn't need answered, that produced in him the particular discomfort of someone being evaluated by a person whose evaluation mattered. "I used to be a ranch foreman," he said, "in the valley, before I came up here." Rose waited. "The man I worked for," Caleb said. He was not Hale. Different man, different operation, but the same type. The kind that used the slow mechanisms, the legal filings, the account reviews, the reputation management to manage people who were in the way of what he wanted. He paused. He had a practice of watering the supply to the bunkhouses during summer drought. Not enough to harm anyone immediately. Enough to reduce capacity over time. Enough to make the men weaker through the hottest weeks when they were working the hardest. Emily looked at him. "That's dangerous," she said. "3 men got sick," he said. "One of them died. It was put down to summer fever, which happens, which was why it was hard to prove it was anything else." He looked at the table. "I had been watching the water levels. I had documentation. I brought it to the county sheriff." "And," Emily said, "and the man I worked for was a significant account at the county bank, which was managed by the county sheriff's brother-in-law," he said. "The documentation was reviewed and found to be inconclusive. I was told that if I continued to make accusations I couldn't substantiate, I would be in a position of having defamed a landowner of good standing." Rose was looking at him with the expression she had been developing, the one that was not quite sympathy and not quite assessment, something in between. "So you left," she said. "I left," he said. "Because you couldn't win," she said. "Because the structures that were supposed to produce justice were aligned with the person I was trying to hold accountable," he said. "And I had just seen what happened to a man who tried to fight that structure directly. He didn't win. He died of summer fever." The kitchen was quiet. Emily looked at her grandmother. Rose reached into the bag. She took out a cloth-wrapped bundle, larger than Caleb had expected. She set it on the table and unwrapped it with the care of someone handling something that has been handled carefully for a long time. The movements of a person whose relationship with this object is not new. Inside was a stack of documents. The original deed was on top. He could see from where he was sitting that it was old. The paper had the texture of something that had been stored correctly for decades, not brittle, but settled with the quality of a document that had been made to last. Beneath it were other papers organized in a sequence he couldn't read from the distance. Rose put her hand flat on the stack. "I have kept these since 1861, she said. "My husband filed the original deed when we came to Wyoming. We built the river property together. He died in 1878. She looked at the papers. Everything I have that is worth protecting is in this stack. Caleb looked at the documents. May I? He said. Rose looked at him for a moment. Then she slid the stack across the table. He read carefully. He was not a lawyer, he had never claimed to be, but he had spent enough time around legal documentation in his years as a foreman to understand what he was looking at. The deed was clear and complete, with the surveying notes attached and properly referenced. The property boundary was explicit. The river access was unambiguous. He went through the other papers. What he found as he went deeper into the stack was not what he had expected. He had expected documentation of what Hale had done to Rose over the past 3 years. What he found was documentation of what Hale had done to everyone in the South Valley over the past 7. It was not a collection assembled in the last few weeks. It was the work of years. Letters signed and dated from farmers who had experienced the same sequence Rose had described. The banking irregularities, the legal challenges to boundary surveys, the subtle pressure on employees and suppliers that made operating a property increasingly difficult until the property became something you couldn't hold. Records of the Henderson acquisition, which had been presented publicly as a voluntary sale, but which the documentation suggested, had been preceded by the same systematic pressure that Rose was now experiencing. A letter handwritten from a man named Garrett, who had run a trading operation on the north side of the valley, and who had written down in the specific language of someone who suspected they might not be around to say it in person what Victor Hale had told him would happen if he didn't sell. Caleb set the papers down. He looked at Rose. "How long have you been collecting this?" he said. 7 years, she said. "You knew what he was doing," he said, "before he came for you." "I watched him come for others," she said. "Yes." He looked at Emily. She had her hands flat on the table, watching him. "Did you know?" he said. "About all of it," she said. "Not until we left. Grandmother had the full picture. She told me most of it on the mountain." She paused. "I knew about our situation. I didn't know about the Garretts. I didn't know about the Henderson acquisition." Caleb looked back at the documents. He was thinking about what he was holding. He was thinking about the specific weight of evidence, and what evidence could and could not do in a territory where the man the evidence was about controlled most of the institutions that would normally process it. Victor Hale controls the county newspaper, the county bank, and through arrangements you could document from this. He tapped the stack. Effectively controls the county sheriff's office and 2 of the 3 county commissioners. He looked at Rose. "Which is why you can't file at the county level." "Yes," Rose said. "Which is why you need Cheyenne," he said. "The Territorial Land Office will process a boundary dispute independently of county jurisdiction if the documentation supports a territorial-level concern," Rose said. She said it with the precision of someone who has thought about this for a long time and has arrived at the mechanism through that thinking. "Victor's legal challenge to my deed is a county filing. But if I file at the territorial level first, and if the documentation shows a pattern of fraudulent land acquisition across multiple properties, not just mine, then it becomes a territorial matter." Caleb was quiet. "You're not just trying to protect your property," he said. "I'm trying to stop him," Rose said. It was the first time she had said it that directly. Emily was looking at her grandmother. "She told me she wanted to save the land," Emily said, quietly. To Caleb. "She didn't tell me about the rest of it until we were halfway up the mountain." Rose looked at her granddaughter. "I needed you to help me move," she said. "I didn't need you to feel the weight of it until we were already moving." Emily looked at her for a moment. "Grandmother," she said. It came out with the specific complexity of someone who loves a person and is simultaneously exasperated by them and understands them completely. "I'm practical," Rose said. "I have always been practical." "You have always done exactly what you thought was right," Emily said. "That's not the same thing." "It is when you're right," Rose said. Caleb looked between them. He thought about 9 years of living alone and the specific quality of silence that 9 years of living alone produced. And he thought about these 2 women on a mountain in November, with a bag full of evidence against one of the most powerful men in the territory. And he thought that whatever he had been telling himself about the virtue of manageable decisions, something about it was insufficient in a way he had been aware of for a long time and had not fully examined. "I need to tell you something," he said. Both women looked at him. "The route through Garrison that I mentioned last night," he said. "It's 3 days in good conditions. In November, with fresh snow, it's 4, possibly 5 if the secondary ridge has drifted." He paused. "I've ridden it once 8 years ago in October. The conditions were different. I can navigate it. I can't promise you what it looks like right now." "But you think we can do it?" Emily said. "I think it can be done," he said, "with the right preparation." Rose was watching him. "You're going to come with us," she said. He looked at her. "You decided that last night," she said. "Before you went to check on the horses. You came back and you said tomorrow we look at what we have. We." She held his gaze. "You'd already decided." He held her gaze in return. "You need someone who knows the route," he said. "Yes," she said, "we do. And someone who can manage the horses in altitude snow," he said. "Also yes," she said. "And someone who knows what to do if Hale has people watching the Garrison Road as well as the Valley Road," he said. Rose's expression shifted. "Does he?" Emily said. "I don't know," Caleb said. "But a man who controls the information flow in a county and has spent 7 years systematically acquiring property through pressure doesn't leave the back roads unmonitored when he knows someone has left with evidence." The kitchen went very quiet. Emily looked at her grandmother. Rose was looking at Caleb. "You know this from experience," she said. "I know it from thinking like he thinks," Caleb said. "Men like Victor Hale don't react to threats. They anticipate them. He knows you left. He knows you had the documents. He knows the only place those documents can hurt him is Cheyenne." He paused. "He's had several days to consider all of this." "How many routes are there from here to Cheyenne that avoid the valley?" Emily said. 3, Caleb said. 2 of them are roads Victor's people would know to watch. The Garrison route is the 3rd, and it's not commonly known because it's not maintained, and most people can't navigate it in November." "But you can," Rose said. "I can," he said. She looked at him for a long time. "Why?" she said. "You've been here 9 years. You arranged your life very carefully to not be involved in things like this. And now a woman knocks on your door and you're sitting here planning how to get through the mountains in November." She paused. "Why?" Caleb was quiet. He looked at the stack of papers on the table. He looked at Rose's hand, still resting on them. The hand of a woman who had been carrying this evidence for 7 years while watching a man systematically dismantle the lives of the people around her. He thought about the man who died of summer fever. He thought about the county sheriff's brother-in-law at the bank. He thought about walking away. "Because I walked away once," he said, "from something that needed someone to stand in it. And a man died." He held Rose's gaze. "I've been telling myself for 9 years that what I did was reasonable, that the situation was unwinnable, that staying would only have added me to the list of people who lost." He paused. "I've been telling myself that so long that I stopped examining whether it was true." Rose looked at him. "Is it true?" she said. He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he said. "I know that a man died, and I had walked away, and those 2 things have been in the same part of my thinking for 9 years. He looked at her hand on the documents. "What you're carrying can put a stop to what he's doing. Not just to your land. To what he's been doing to everyone." He looked at her directly. "I'm not going to watch someone carry that and not help them get it where it needs to go." Emily was very still. Rose nodded once. "All right," she said. She picked up the documents. She put them back in the bundle and wrapped it carefully and placed it in the bag. "How long does she need to rest before we can travel?" Emily asked. She was looking at her grandmother. Rose answered before Caleb could. 2 days, she said. "I need 2 days." "The snow will have settled by then," Caleb said. "That's actually better for the Garrison route. Fresh powder on the secondary ridge is harder to navigate than packed snow. Emily looked at him. "You've been thinking about the timing," she said. "Since this morning," he said. She absorbed that. The second day brought something Caleb had not calculated for. He had been checking the horses, assessing the snowfall depth, making the specific preparations of someone planning a mountain route in difficult conditions. He had made a list in his head what they needed to carry, what the horses could manage at altitude, where the route's most difficult sections fell, and what conditions those sections required. He was doing this with the focused attention of a task that needed to be done correctly, and the focused attention was keeping him from thinking about other things, which was by design. He came in at mid-afternoon to find Emily at his desk. She had paper and a pen. She looked up when he came in. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "I found paper in the drawer. I should have asked." "What are you writing?" he said. "Letters," she said. "To people whose names are in the documentation. The families that Victor pressured. The Garretts. 3 others." She paused. "If we get to Cheyenne and file the territorial complaint, the people named in the documentation will need to be contacted. They'll need to know there's a proceeding, that they can speak to it, that someone is actually doing something." She looked at the paper. "I don't know if they'll all want to be part of it. Some of them may be too afraid. But they should know it's happening." Caleb looked at her. "You've been thinking about this for a while," he said. "Since the mountain," she said. "I had time to think on the mountain." She paused. "I was thinking about what it means to have evidence and not know anyone else is using it. What it's like to have something happen to you and believe nobody knows, and nobody is doing anything." She looked at the papers. "They should know. Even if they can't help, they should know." He stood in the doorway. He was thinking about the man who died of summer fever, about whether that man's family had ever known that someone had tried. "The Garretts," he said. "In the documentation, the trading operation." Emily looked at him. "There's a letter from a man named Garrett," he said. "In the stack, handwritten. He describes what Hale told him would happen if he didn't sell." "I read it," Emily said. "Is he still in the valley?" She was quiet for a moment. "No," she said. "He sold. He left. I don't know where he went." Caleb was quiet. He had thought about this when he read the letter. The letter was the most important document in the stack, more important in terms of direct incrimination than the deed or the survey notes, because it contained a direct account of Hale, making explicit the consequences of non-compliance. That was not legal maneuvering. That was something else. If Garrett can be found and will speak to it, Caleb said, that letter becomes testimony rather than documentation. Emily looked at him. "You know the difference," she said. "I learned the difference 9 years ago," he said. "The hard way." She held his gaze. "Are you saying you know where he is?" she said. "I'm saying I know someone who might," he said. "In Garrison. A man I dealt with when I rode the route 8 years ago. He knows everyone who came through the territory in that period." Emily put down her pen. "You're building the case," she said. "You're not just guiding us through the mountains. You're thinking about what happens when we get to Cheyenne." He did not answer that, but he did not deny it. Rose appeared from the other room where she had been resting. She looked between them. She read the room with the accuracy of a woman who had been reading rooms for 70 years. "What did I miss?" she said. "Caleb knows someone in Garrison," Emily said. "Someone who may know where Garrett went." Rose looked at Caleb. "Garrett's testimony," she said immediately. She had the same speed of connection that Emily had the family resemblance in how they thought was becoming visible. "With the letter and testimony, the territorial complaint has direct criminal grounds, not just civil." "Yes," Caleb said. Rose sat down. She was quiet for a moment. "You are more useful than I realized when I knocked on your door," she said. "You didn't know who I was when you knocked," he said. "No," she said. "But I knew what kind of man opened the door." She looked at him steadily. A man who opens his door at 11 o'clock at night in November to strangers is a man with something left in him. I just didn't know what specifically. What did you think was left? He said. Conscience, she said. I thought there was conscience left. That's all I needed. Caleb looked at her. 9 years of manageable decisions, and a 70-year-old woman on a mountain who had been watching him for 12 hours and had concluded that conscience was present. He hoped she was right. The third night, Rose told him something he had not been told. Emily was asleep. Rose had told her directly that she needed to sleep and that she would stay awake for a while, and that she was an old woman, and she made the decisions in her own house even when she was not in her own house, which Emily had accepted with the specific grace of someone who knows when arguing is futile. Caleb was at the fire. Rose came to sit across from him. She did not have the bag. My husband, she said. He looked at her. Thomas, she said. He died in 1878. He was 63. He worked the river property for 20 years. She paused. He and Victor Hale's father were friends. Did you know that? Caleb stared at her. No, he said. When we settled in the valley, the elder Hale was our neighbor to the north. He was a decent man. He and Thomas hunted together. They disagreed about cattle management, and they disagreed about water rights in dry summers, and they were still friends. She looked at the fire. Victor was not like his father. He was smarter, I think, and more afraid of not having enough. His father was a man who could lose a season and trust that the next one would come. Rose told him about the Henderson filing before she told him the rest. She sat across from him at the fire with the particular stillness of a woman settling in for a long truth. And Caleb recognized it, the posture of someone who has been carrying information at weight for a long time and has arrived at the decision to put it down in front of another person. Victor filed the Henderson Boundary Challenge in 1879, she said. The year after Thomas died. I don't think that was a coincidence. I think he waited until Thomas was gone. She looked at the fire. Thomas was the kind of man people listened to, not because he was loud, because he was careful. When he said something was wrong, people believed him because he didn't say things were wrong unless he was certain. She paused. Victor knew that. He waited. And after Thomas died, Caleb said. The Hendersons lasted 2 years, Rose said. Carl Henderson fought it the way you fight things when you believe the system will eventually see sense. He filed responses. He hired a county lawyer. He went to the sheriff. She looked at her hands. By the end of the second year, the legal costs were more than the property was earning. His wife had a sick child. He sold. At what price? Caleb said. 40% of what the land was worth, Rose said. Caleb was quiet. The survey notes in your documentation, he said. The Henderson survey. You have a copy. Carl gave it to me before he left, Rose said. He came to say goodbye, and he had this envelope. He said, Rose, I know you're going to fight him eventually. Keep this. It shows what the real boundary was. She paused. That was 5 years ago. I've been adding to the file since then. 7 years of collection, Caleb said. You told me earlier you started 7 years ago. I started watching 7 years ago, Rose said. I started collecting 2 years later after the Henderson sale. Watching doesn't produce anything. Collecting produces something you can use. Caleb looked at her. He was thinking about the distinction between watching and collecting, between recognizing something and building the case for it. He had watched 9 years ago and had collected some documentation, but not enough and not organized, and when the time came, what he had was insufficient. Rose had been building toward sufficiency for 5 years. The Garrett letter, he said. When did he give you that? He didn't give it to me, Rose said. He left it. When his property was taken, not in the same way as the Hendersons. Victor was getting more efficient by then. It took less than a year. He left in the night. He left a letter under my door. She paused. I think he knew I had been watching. I think he knew I would understand what the letter meant. What happened to him? Caleb said. I don't know, Rose said. He went east. That's the last I heard. She said it with the specific flatness of someone who has accepted an uncertainty they don't like. She had been holding Garrett's letter for 3 years, building a case that needed his testimony, not knowing where he was. "My contact in Garrison," Caleb said. "He knows the trading routes east. If Garrett kept trading, which a man with his background would, there's a reasonable chance there's a trail." Rose looked at him. "You've been thinking about this since you read the letter," she said. "Since I read the letter," he confirmed. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Why did you really leave the valley?" He looked at her. "I told you," he said. "You told me what happened," she said. "You told me about the water, about the man who died, about the county sheriff and the bank. That's what happened." She held his gaze. "I asked why you left, not what you left from." He was quiet. Outside the wind had dropped, which in mountain weather was sometimes better news and sometimes worse. Tonight it felt like better news. Tomorrow would tell. "I had a wife," he said. Rose did not react. She had known there was more. She waited. "Her name was Sarah," he said. "We'd been married 4 years when the situation with the ranch owner developed. The year I was trying to get someone to hear the documentation." He paused. "She believed me. From the beginning. She was the one who helped me organize the papers, the one who suggested going to the county sheriff before we understood about the bank." He paused again. "When the sheriff told me that continuing to make accusations would have legal consequences, he was specific about what those consequences were. He said the man I was working for had significant resources and patience, and that accusations of the type I was making, if pursued, would likely result in countersuits that would take years to resolve. That we would lose our home, our savings. And Sarah," Rose said. "Sarah said to keep going," he said. "She said it wasn't about the money. She was right that it wasn't about the money. She was—" He stopped. "She was the kind of person who believed the right thing was the right thing regardless of the cost." He looked at the fire. "And then the man I was working for died of summer fever. And the case died with it because dead men can't be held accountable for what the living can't prove, and the living who might have spoken didn't, because the same machinery that had protected him was still running. And Sarah," Rose said again. "We lost the house anyway," he said. "The countersuit. It took 2 years, and we didn't have 2 years of resources. We lost the house, and my reputation in the valley was— I had been called a liar publicly, in the newspaper. The paper said I had made accusations against a man of good standing without evidence, which was true in the sense that the evidence I had was not enough." He looked at the fire. "Sarah was expecting our first child. She went to her parents in Nebraska. She said she'd wait. He stopped. Rose was very still. "She didn't wait," Caleb said. "Not because she didn't mean to. The child was born early. There were complications." He paused. "I wasn't there. I was still here, still trying to put together something that I could use, still believing that if I could find the right piece, it would be enough. I was here when she needed me." He looked at his hands. "I came up here a year after. I told myself I was getting away from the valley. I told myself I was protecting myself from losing anything else." He paused. "I think I was punishing myself. The isolation wasn't protection. It was penance." Rose looked at him for a long time. She did not say she was sorry. She did not say it was not his fault. She sat with it the way someone sits with something real, which means not trying to fix it or diminish it or organize it into something that fits better. "Her name was Sarah," she said finally. "Yes," he said. "And the child? A girl," he said. "She survived. She's 8 now. She's in Nebraska with Sarah's parents." He paused. "I write to her grandparents. They let me write." Rose absorbed that. "Her name," she said. He looked at her. "Margaret," he said. "That's a good name," Rose said. "Sarah's grandmother's name," he said. They sat with the fire for a while. "I'm not asking you to do this for me," Rose said finally. "I need you to know that. I'm not asking you to fight this battle because it writes something from your past, or because it gives your isolation meaning. I'm asking you because you know the route, and you know what the documentation needs, and you have a contact in Garrison who might know where Garrett is." "I know," he said. "But," she said. He looked at her. "But it is also the right thing," she said. "Both can be true. You can be useful to me, and you can be doing something that matters for its own reasons. Those aren't competing things." Caleb looked at her. "You are a very direct woman," he said. "I am 70 years old," she said. "I don't have the time or the interest to be indirect." He almost smiled. It surprised him. "Sleep," he said. "We have 2 more days before we can travel." "I know," she said. "I'm going to sleep." She stood slowly, but without assistance, and looked at him. "Thank you for telling me about Sarah." He nodded. She went to the other room. He sat with the fire alone and thought about 9 years and penance, and the specific weight of a choice you have made and live inside and cannot fully put down. He thought about Margaret, who was 8 years old in Nebraska and received letters from a father she had never met. He thought about Victor Hale's file of documents, which contained the evidence of 7 years of systematic wrong, and about a woman who had been building that file alone because she believed the right thing was the right thing, regardless of the cost. He thought about what Rose had said. Both can be true. He went to sleep. The 4th morning brought the thing he had been hoping would not arrive yet. He was at the horses before first light, checking their condition and the condition of the snow on the trail when he heard it. Not a sound, exactly a change in the quality of the silence. The specific change that his 9 years on this mountain had trained him to recognize, the change that meant the silence was not empty. He came back to the cabin at a pace that was deliberate and calm because panicking served nothing. Emily was already awake. She had the instinct of someone who had been alert for weeks and slept with part of herself still listening. "What is it?" she said. "Someone's on the lower trail," he said. She was on her feet immediately. "How many?" she said. "I don't know yet," he said. "The sound was 1 horse, but I only caught a moment of it." "Victor's men," she said. "Possibly," he said. "Or a traveler. But a traveler on this mountain in November is unlikely." "We can't wait for 2 more days," she said. "No," he said. She went to wake Rose. Caleb got his coat and his rifle and went back to the trail entrance to listen with the specific attention of a man who has been listening to this mountain for 9 years and knows exactly what each variation of its sounds means. 1 horse, moving carefully, which meant 1 man or 1 man with a pack load, or 1 man who was trying not to be heard, which was the most concerning possibility, because the trail to his cabin was not the kind of trail you navigated carefully unless you were navigating it carefully for a reason. He went back inside. Rose was up. She had the bag. She was dressed. She had been dressed quickly and completely, which told him she had slept with the clothes near her rather than putting them away, which told him she had anticipated this possibility. "How much time do we have?" she said. "I don't know," he said. The sound was at the lower switchback. "That's 40 minutes from here in these conditions." "What do we do?" Emily said. He thought about it for 5 seconds. "We go," he said. "Now." "She's not ready," Emily said. 2 more days, you said." "She's upright and mobile," Rose said. "That's ready enough?" Emily looked at her grandmother. "I'm not arguing this in the next 40 minutes, Rose said. She looked at Caleb. "What do we need?" 20 minutes to prep the horses, he said. "Take only what fits in the saddlebag you can carry yourself. We can't load the horses heavy for the secondary ridge." Emily was already moving. "The documents," Caleb said to Rose. "I have them," she said. She patted the bag. He had never doubted that. The preparations were 23 minutes. He knew because he counted the way you count when counting is the thing that keeps your mind on the task, rather than on what's behind you on the trail. Emily worked with the efficiency of someone who had been watching how he managed the horses for 4 days and had paid attention. She got the animals ready faster than he had expected. Rose mounted on the 2nd attempt. She did it without asking for help. He watched her calculate the effort, Make the attempt, not quite make it recalibrate, and make it on the second try. She settled into the saddle with the expression of someone who has done something harder than they wanted to and is not going to say so. "Ready," she said. They went. The garrison route went east before it went north, which meant the first hour took them across the exposed face of the secondary ridge with the cold and the altitude working together in the specific way that high mountain travel in November worked. Caleb went first, reading the snow, finding the route by the specific knowledge of someone who had ridden it once and had spent 4 days thinking about what it required now. Emily was behind him. Rose was behind Emily. They did not talk. Talking in mountain cold at that elevation was a waste of warmth and breath, and everyone understood that without needing it. Explained. An hour in, they crossed the high point of the secondary ridge, and Caleb stopped and listened. Nothing behind them. Either the rider had not come all the way to the cabin, or had arrived and found them gone and was deciding what to do about that, or was behind them on the trail at a distance he couldn't hear yet. None of those options was reassuring. He started them moving again. The descent on the east side was steeper than the ascent, which was technically easier for the horses, but harder on the riders, because the angle required a different balance, and the snow on the east face was different, less packed, more drift. The kind of snow that shifted underfoot in ways that required constant attention. Rose handled it without complaint. He had not expected her to complain. He was watching for signs of the physical distress that would require stopping, which was different. What he saw was effort visible, real effort that she was managing with the same method she applied to everything, which was to look at the next step, rather than the whole distance. "How far to the first rest point?" Emily said. She had moved up beside him on a wider section of the trail. 3 hours from the high point, he said. "There's a sheltered area near the Eastern Creek crossing." "She'll need to stop before 3 hours," Emily said, quietly, not for Rose to hear. 2 hours, he said. "I'll find something." Emily looked at him. "You have been on this mountain for 9 years, she said, "alone, and in 4 days, you've been planning a mountain crossing, preparing for pursuit, and managing 2 people who are not part of your normal life." She paused. "You're different than I expected when I knocked on that door." "What did you expect?" he said. "I don't know exactly," she said. "Something harder, something more closed." "I am closed," he said. "You were," she said. He looked at her. She held his gaze for a moment, and then she dropped back to ride beside Rose. He rode ahead and found the stopping point at 1 hour and 40 minutes. Not 2 hours, a natural shelter in the rock face on the east side that cut the wind and gave them 10 minutes out of the cold to let Rose rest and drink water that he had kept warm against his body in the flask he'd packed. Rose drank without being told to. She looked at the rock face. "We're making good time," she said. "Good enough," he said. "Don't manage me," she said. "Are we making good time or not?" "Better than I projected," he said. She nodded. "Somebody's on the trail behind us," she said. He looked at her. "I've been listening," she said. "I couldn't hear it an hour ago. I can hear something now. It might be nothing. It might be the wind." He listened. The wind off the ridge was consistent. Behind it, at the edge of perception, there was something that was not wind. "We need to move," he said. They moved. The second major section of the garrison route crossed a narrow section above a creek where the trail was wide enough for 1 horse at a time, and the drop to the right was significant. Caleb went first, slowly testing each step, and the horse responded to the trust he extended by managing the footing with the careful intelligence of a mountain-trained animal that has been well handled. Emily followed. Then Rose. Rose's horse was 3 steps into the narrow section when it shifted. Not a stumble. A sideways reaction to something, a loose stone under the snow. Maybe something the horse couldn't have been expected to manage without difficulty in those conditions. Rose kept her seat. She did not panic. She did not grab the saddle horn with the frantic grip of someone who has lost confidence. She moved with the horse, adjusted her weight in the specific way of someone who has been riding for 50 years and whose body responds to the movement before her mind has processed the threat. The horse corrected. They moved through. On the other side, when they were back on Wider Trail, Emily said, "Grandmother." Her voice had a specific quality in it. "I'm fine," Rose said. "You're Emily." Rose's voice was firm. "I'm fine. I kept my seat. The horse is fine. Keep moving." Emily looked at Caleb. He was watching Rose's face, not her position on the horse. Rose's face told him what he needed to know. She was shaken, she was managing it, and she would not appreciate any acknowledgement of either of those things. He turned and continued down the trail. An hour later, something happened that changed the shape of everything. He had been listening continuously for the sound behind them, and at the third hour of the descent, it became clear, not wind. Horses. Two of them at the distance of perhaps 90 minutes, moving at a pace that was faster than careful, but not fast enough for the terrain to be dangerous. Professional riders, men who knew mountain travel. "How many?" Emily asked. She had come up beside him when he stopped. "Two," he said. "Maybe three." "Victor's men," she said. "Most likely," he said. "Or county men he's arranged to use. Either way, they know the route, which means someone told them about the Garrison crossing." "Only someone who knew the route would know to tell them," Emily said. "Who knows about this route besides you?" He thought about it. "My contact in Garrison," he said. "And possibly the people who used it before me. But that's 8 years ago." "Who is your contact?" Emily said. "A man named Webb," he said. "He ran supplies through the territory for 20 years. He retired to Garrison 6 years back." "Would he have told Victor's people about this route?" "No," Caleb said. Then he paused. "Not voluntarily." Emily looked at him. "Victor has resources and patience," Caleb said, and he heard Rose's phrase come back in his own voice. "If he's been preparing for the possibility that your grandmother might run, and if he's thorough, he would have identified anyone who knew the back routes," Emily said. "Yes." "And pressured them," she said. "Or bought them," he said. "Webb is retired. He has a small operation. If someone came to him with money and asked a few casual questions about old trading routes, he wouldn't have known he was helping them track us," Emily said. "Possibly not," Caleb said. "So they knew the route before we took it," Emily said. "They've been behind us since we left the cabin." Caleb was thinking. He was thinking about the route ahead and the route behind, and the specific mathematics of position on mountain trails. 2 men behind them on the same route was a problem he could calculate. 2 men behind them who had information was a different kind of problem. "There's a fork 3 miles ahead," he said. "The main route goes north to Garrison. There's a secondary branch that goes east toward the river settlements. Most people don't know about it because it adds 2 days to the crossing." Emily looked at him. "But it comes out south of Garrison," he said, "at the Miller crossing. From there you can connect to the territorial road that goes directly to Cheyenne without passing through Garrison at all." "You want to take the secondary branch?" Emily said. "If they know the Garrison route, they know where it comes out," he said. "If I were managing a pursuit on this route, I'd send men behind and send other men to wait at the Garrison end. 2 behind, 2 waiting. A clean pincer." Rose had come up beside them. She had been listening. "The Miller crossing," she said. "How much longer?" 2 days added, Caleb said. 3 total instead of 1. "And the conditions on the secondary branch," she said. "Harder," he said. "Less maintained. More elevation on the middle section." Rose looked at him. "Can I manage it?" she said, directly. Not asking for reassurance. Asking for his honest assessment. He looked at her. At the woman who had kept her seat on that narrow section. Who had ridden for 7 hours in conditions that would have stopped most people half her age. Who had been building a case against Victor Hale for 7 years alone. "Yes," he said. "You can manage it." She nodded. "Then we take the secondary branch," she said. Emily looked at her grandmother. "Grandmother." "Victor has men behind us and probably men waiting at Garrison," Rose said. "Caleb knows a route that avoids both. It's harder and takes longer. We take it." She looked at Emily with the expression of a woman who loves someone and also refuses to be managed by that love. "I'm 70, not dead. Stop looking at me like I'm fragile." Emily closed her mouth. She looked at Caleb. He thought he saw very briefly something in her expression that was not quite a smile, but was adjacent to it, the specific expression of someone watching a person they love be exactly themselves in exactly the right moment. "The secondary branch," Caleb said. "We turn at the fork." They moved. The fork was 3 miles and an hour ahead. For that hour, Caleb managed the pace with the specific calculation of needing to reach the fork before the men behind them could narrow the gap enough to see which branch they took. If the pursuers didn't know they had turned, they would continue on the main route to Garrison and not understand the situation until they arrived and found no one there. That bought time. Time was what they needed. The fork arrived and he took the eastern branch without slowing, the 3 horses moving through the turn with the smooth continuation of animals that had been responding to direction all day and trusted it. He looked back. The main route behind them was empty. For now. 30 minutes on the secondary branch, Emily came up beside him. "Will they figure it out?" she said. "That we took the other branch?" "Eventually," he said. "Tracks are hard to follow in this snow at this pace. If they reach the fork before dark, they might see the turn. If they reach it after dark, they won't track it until morning." "What happens at morning?" "We'll have 6 hours on them," he said, "on a route they don't know." "Do they know this route?" she said. "Nobody knows this route," he said. "I only know it because Webb told me about it 8 years ago when I mentioned I'd ridden the Garrison crossing. He said if I ever needed the quieter version, go east at the fork." Emily was quiet for a moment. "Webb," she said. "Your contact. If Victor pressured him about the main route." "He doesn't know about this branch," Caleb said. "Webb mentioned it to me in passing. I don't think it was information he thought anyone would use." "But you remembered it," she said. "I remember routes," he said. "In case." She looked at him. "In case of what?" she said. "In case 9 years of solitude turned out to need a back way out," he said. She held his gaze. "Did you always think you might need to leave?" she said. He looked ahead at the trail. "I think I always knew this life wasn't the permanent answer," he said. "I just didn't have a reason to admit it until someone knocked on my door." The day was failing. They had 6 more miles to the shelter point. He knew from Webb's description, a natural rock formation on the east side that Webb had said could hold 2 horses and 3 people overnight with a fire. They were going to need the fire. Rose had said nothing for 2 hours, which was not its own alarm. Rose was economical with words in difficult conditions, but Caleb had been watching her in his peripheral vision, the way you watch something you're concerned about without making your concern visible. She was tired. She was managing. The line between those 2 things was narrower than it had been this morning. 40 minutes, he said, not to anyone in particular. Emily heard it and understood. "Grandmother," she said. "I heard him," Rose said. 40 minutes. "Can you?" Emily, Rose said. "I will tell you if I cannot." "I have not told you I cannot." 40 minutes. Emily dropped back. She came up beside Caleb. "She's exhausted," she said quietly. "I know," he said. "Is 40 minutes accurate?" she said. 35 now, he said. "I rounded up." She looked at him. "You've been watching her this whole time," she said. "Yes," he said. "And managing the pace around what she can handle," she said. "Yes." Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Sarah would have liked you." He looked at her. She was looking ahead at the trail. "She sounds like someone who believed in doing the right thing regardless of cost," Emily said. "You're doing the right thing regardless of cost. She would have liked that." He had no response to that. He rode ahead and found the shelter, and they stopped with 30 minutes of light left, which was exactly what he had calculated, and he got the fire started while Emily managed Rose's descent from the horse. And Rose let her, which told Caleb more than anything else that day about how much the crossing had cost the old woman. They ate by the fire. Rose drank tea that Emily made from dried herbs she had taken from Caleb's kitchen. Without asking which Caleb found, he did not mind at all. "Tomorrow," Rose said. "Tomorrow we reach the Miller crossing by noon," Caleb said. "From there, it's open country to the territorial road." "And the men behind us," Rose said, "are on the wrong route," he said, "and won't know it until morning." Rose nodded. She looked at the fire. "Victor," she said, "when we file in Cheyenne, it will take time. Proceedings take time." "Yes," Caleb said. "He'll know what we've filed," she said. "He has contacts in the territorial office, not enough to stop it. That's why we have to file there rather than county, but enough to know." She paused. "He'll try to discredit it. He'll say the documentation was obtained improperly. He'll say I was incompetent to collect it. He'll find something." "He will," Caleb said. "He will," Caleb said. "That's why we need Garrett," she said. "Yes," he said. "Your Webb, in Garrison or wherever we reach him. Does he actually know where Garrett went?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "He knew where Garrett was planning to go," he said. 3 years ago. Whether Garrett stayed there, whether Webb's information is current, whether Garrett will agree to speak to it." He paused. "Those are things we don't know yet." Rose looked at him. "But you think it's possible," she said. "I think it's worth pursuing," he said. "What do you think happens if we get to Cheyenne and file and Garrett can't be found?" she said. He held her gaze. "I think the documentation is strong enough to open the proceeding," he said. "I think it's strong enough to freeze Victor's actions against your property pending the review. I think it's strong enough to get the other families' situations examined." He paused. "Whether it's strong enough for criminal accountability without Garrett's testimony, I don't know." Rose absorbed that. "So, at minimum, we stop him from taking my land and give the other families a chance," she said. "Yes," he said. "And at maximum, we end it," she said. "Yes," he said. She looked at the fire for a long moment. "Thomas used to say," she said, "that you do what you can do, and you trust that doing what you can do is enough. That you don't get to know in advance whether it will be enough. You just have to do it." "He sounds like a man who understood something difficult," Caleb said. "He spent 20 years understanding it," she said. "He had time." Emily was watching her grandmother. Rose looked at her granddaughter. "I need to sleep," she said. "I'm going to sleep now." She said it the way she said everything directly without apology, without the performance of being fine that she had been doing all day on the trail. She was tired. She was going to sleep. Those were the facts. Emily helped her settle near the fire. Caleb sat across from the fire and watched it, and thought about tomorrow, and about Garrett, and about a territorial land office in Cheyenne, where a filing had the power to undo 7 years of systematic wrong if the right evidence arrived with the right documentation in the right form. He thought about 9 years of manageable decisions. He was on a mountain in November with 2 women and a bag full of evidence and men behind him on a wrong route. This was not a manageable decision. This was the other kind, the kind that mattered. He was not, he realized, afraid of it. He was not afraid of it at all. They reached the Miller crossing at 11:30 in the morning. Caleb had said noon, which was accurate for the pace he had projected, but they had moved faster than projected because Rose had woken at 4 in the morning and said she was ready, and when Caleb looked at her in the firelight and assessed what he saw, he made the decision to believe her. The extra time had made the difference. The Miller crossing was a shallow ford over the eastern branch of the creek, and on the far side of it the secondary branch connected to a cart track that led south to the territorial road. The cart track was not maintained and would not have been passable in deep snow, but the east side of the ridge had taken less accumulation than the west face, and the track was navigable with care. He stopped them at the ford and listened. Nothing behind them on the trail. Nothing ahead. He had been listening since before dawn, when he had gotten up and stood at the edge of their shelter and paid attention to the mountain with the full concentration of 9 years of practice. What he heard told him they were ahead of the pursuit by enough margin to be comfortable and not enough to be careless. The men who had been following them would have reached the garrison end of the main route by midday yesterday, found no one, and would have turned around and begun tracking back. By now, they had likely found the fork and understood what had happened. They were behind. How far behind was the question he couldn't answer precisely. He moved them across the ford. Rose's horse handled the water without drama. She was riding better than yesterday, which Caleb took as real improvement rather than performed improvement, because Rose did not perform. What she was honestly. On the far side, the terrain changed. The altitude dropped steadily, and the air had a different quality, not warm, but less sharp. The specific quality of lower elevation in November that felt almost hospitable after 3 days above the secondary ridge. Emily came up beside him when the track widened enough. "We made it," she said. "We're off the mountain," he said. "We haven't made it yet." She looked at him. "How long to the territorial road?" she said. "4 hours at this pace," he said. "Maybe 5. And from the territorial road to Cheyenne?" 2 days, he said, "with a stop at a way station I know at the midpoint." She was quiet for a moment. "Victor's men," she said. "Will they follow us onto the territorial road?" "That's the question," he said. "On the mountain they have some claim to be in pursuit of people who left the county under circumstances that could be framed as flight from legal proceedings. On the territorial road, that argument gets complicated. Any enforcement action on a territorial road requires territorial authority." "Which Victor doesn't have," Emily said. "Which Victor doesn't have," Caleb said. "Which doesn't mean he won't try. It means whatever he tries will be harder to make look official." Emily absorbed that. "He'll have to make a different move," she said. "He'll telegraph ahead," Caleb said. "If he has a contact at the territorial office." "He does?" Emily said. "Grandmother said so." "Then he'll try to discredit the filing before it's accepted. Not block it. He can't block a legitimate territorial land filing. But he can introduce questions about the filer's competency, about the documentation's legitimacy, about the circumstances of how it was collected." He paused. "The competency petition he was planning to file against your grandmother in the county, he may try to file a version of that at the territorial level. Not to succeed, to delay." Emily looked at him. "A delay could be as effective as a defeat," she said. "A delay in winter is a problem for a woman whose property is under a legal hold," he said. "She can't transact, can't generate income, can't pay anyone to manage the property, while the proceeding takes months." "So we need to file before he can get his counter-petition in," Emily said. "We need to file, and we need the filing to be strong enough that the delay tactic fails immediately," he said. "Which is what Garrett's testimony does for the filing." He paused. "Without it, the filing opens a proceeding, but gives Hale's lawyers something to contest. With it, the filing establishes a pattern of criminal conduct that makes a delay petition politically difficult for anyone at the territorial office who doesn't want to appear complicit." "You've been planning this since the cabin," Emily said. "I've been planning this since I read the Garrett letter," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "What do you actually know about territorial land law?" He was quiet for a second. "Enough," he said. "And Webb knows more." "Webb is in Garrison," she said. "We're not going through Garrison." "No," he said. "But we're stopping at the way station. The way station has a telegraph." She understood immediately. "You're going to wire Webb," she said. "I'm going to ask Webb 2 things," he said. "Whether he knows where Garrett went, and whether he knows a territorial land attorney in Cheyenne who is not in Victor Hale's pocket." Emily looked at him. "The second question," she said. "You've been thinking about that. Since the second day," he said. "You can file a territorial complaint without an attorney. Rose has the documentation and the legal basis. But an attorney who knows the process and knows the specific personalities at the territorial office can get a filing in front of the right person rather than sitting in a queue. He paused. The queue is where delay petitions live. In front of the right person, they don't survive the first review. Emily was very still. "You're not just guiding us to Cheyenne," she said. "No," he said. "You're building a case," she said. "The same thing you tried to build 9 years ago. With better documentation," he said, "and a better route." She held his gaze. Something moved in her face. "Why didn't you say any of this from the beginning?" she said. "Because in the beginning, I didn't know if the documentation was sufficient," he said. "I needed to read it before I could tell you what it could do." He paused. "And because you didn't ask me to build the case, you asked for one night. And you gave us considerably more than that," she said. "The documentation is real," he said. "Your grandmother built something real. It deserves a real attempt." Emily looked ahead at the track. "She built it for 7 years," Emily said. "Alone, after my grandfather died, while Victor was taking everything around her." She paused. "She didn't tell me what she was doing, not all of it. She let me think we were running to save the property." She was quiet for a moment. "We were running to end what he was doing to everyone. She just didn't tell me that until we were already on the mountain." "She told me," Caleb said. Emily looked at him. "The third night," he said, "when you were asleep, she came and sat by the fire and told me." Emily was quiet. "Why did she tell you and not me?" she said. "Because she was assessing what I could do with the information," he said. "She didn't know what I was, or what I could be useful for when she knocked on the door. She needed to figure that out before she showed me the full picture." He paused. "She told you what you needed to carry the load. She told me what I needed to be useful." Emily absorbed that. "She manages people," Emily said. "Not critically, as an observation. She's been doing it my whole life, and I never quite understood the mechanism until just now." "She's very good at it," Caleb said. "She is," Emily said. They rode in silence for a while. Then Emily said, "What do you want from this?" "When it's over, when we've filed and whatever happens has happened, what do you want?" He looked ahead at the track. "I want the case to succeed," he said. "That's what you want for us," she said. "What do you want for yourself?" He was quiet. "I don't know," he said. "I've been thinking about it for the last 3 days." "And," she said. "And the honest answer is that I don't know what I want," he said. "I know I don't want to go back up the mountain and keep counting years. I know that." He paused. "Beyond that, I'm less clear." Emily looked at him. "You have a daughter in Nebraska," she said. He looked at her. "You told grandmother," she said. "She told me. She tells me things that I need to know. That's how she manages." He was quiet. "Margaret," Emily said. "Your daughter. When did you last see her?" "I've never seen her," he said. She stared at him. "She was born after I came up here," he said. "I was already on the mountain." "But you write," she said. "To her grandparents," he said. "They write back. They've sent me drawings. When she was old enough to draw." He paused. "Her grandparents are good people. They haven't kept her from me. They've allowed me to be present in the only way I was available to be present." "And now?" Emily said. He looked at the track ahead. "I'm off the mountain," he said. "That's the first step." Emily was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "She's 8 years old." "Yes," he said. "That's not too late," she said. He held her gaze for a moment. "No," he said. "It's not." They rode on. The territorial road appeared at 4 in the afternoon, and when they came out onto it from the cart track, Caleb felt something shift in the air around them. Not safety, which would have been inaccurate, but the specific change in the quality of their situation that came from moving from territory where they were isolated and where Victor's men could operate with relative impunity to territory where there were other travelers, way stations witnesses to their presence and movement. Victor Hale's power was in controlling information. On the territorial road, information was harder to control. The way station was 3 hours south, and they made it before dark. It was a substantial operation for a territorial way station, 6 rooms, a common room with a fire, a stable that could hold 20 horses, a cook who produced adequate food without ceremony. Caleb had stopped here once 8 years ago on a supply run. The man who ran it then had been replaced by a younger man who gave no indication of recognizing Caleb, which was fine. He got rooms. He got food. He found the telegraph operator. He was in the telegraph room for 45 minutes. The first wire went to Webb in Garrison. The second wire went to a man named Patterson in Cheyenne. Patterson was not an attorney. He was a former territorial land administrator who had retired 3 years ago, and who had the specific combination of knowledge of the system and independence from it that Caleb needed. He had known Patterson distantly from his foreman years as someone who operated with the specific integrity of a man who took his responsibility to the territory seriously, rather than to whoever was currently powerful in it. He had not contacted Patterson in 9 years. He was contacting him now because 9 years had passed and the situation required it. The wire said, "Patterson, it's Morgan. I have a filing situation that requires someone who knows the right person at the Territorial Land Office. The filing involves a pattern of fraudulent land acquisition across 12 properties in Red Hollow Valley. Documentation is complete and strong. The filing party has the original deed and 7 years of corroborating evidence. The opposing party is Victor Hale. He will try to delay with a counterpetition claiming filer incompetency. We need to be in front of the right person before that petition can be filed. We arrive in 2 days. Can you help?" He waited. The reply came in 20 minutes. Patterson wrote Morgan. "Long time. I know Hale by reputation. Not a good reputation. The right person at the territorial office is a woman named Agnes Cole. She does not like delay tactics, and she especially does not like men who use the system to acquire what they couldn't acquire honestly. I'll send her a note tonight. Come to my house when you arrive. We'll go to the office together. Bring everything." Caleb read it twice. He folded it and put it in his coat. He went back to the common room. Rose and Emily were at the table near the fire. Rose was eating with the steady focus she brought to eating when she was managing her energy carefully. Emily looked up when Caleb came in. She read his face. "Good news," she said. "I have a contact in Cheyenne," he said. "Someone who knows the right person at the Territorial Land Office. We're meeting him when we arrive." He sat down. He put the folded telegram on the table. Rose looked at it. She picked it up and read it. She set it down. "Agnes Cole," she said. "I know that name." "You know her," Emily said. "I know of her," Rose said. "She handled a boundary dispute in the Northern Territory 4 years ago. The documentation I have from the Henderson situation, I corresponded with someone in Cheyenne about the Henderson case, trying to understand the filing process. They mentioned Cole as someone who took these matters seriously." She paused. "I didn't know how to reach her directly." Caleb looked at her. "Patterson will introduce us," he said. Rose looked at him steadily. "You wired a contact you haven't spoken to in 9 years," she said. "Yes," he said. "And he responded in 20 minutes," she said. "Yes," he said. "What does that tell you?" she said. He thought about it. That he's been paying attention to what's happening in the territory, he said. That Victor Hale's name meant something to him when he read the wire. Or, Rose said, that you have more standing than you've given yourself credit for. He looked at her. 9 years ago. She said, you tried to do something right and you were stopped. But you documented it. You tried. The man who tried to expose what was happening to his workers is not invisible. The people who mattered, the Patterson types, they remember who tried and who didn't. Caleb was quiet. Webb's reply, he said. I haven't gotten it yet. I asked him about Garrett. You'll check in the morning, Rose said. Yes? He said. She nodded. She finished eating. She looked at Emily. I'm going to sleep, she said. I know, Emily said. Stop looking at me like that, Rose said. Like what? Emily said. Like you're tallying my condition every hour, Rose said. I'm tired. I'm not failing. There's a difference. Emily looked at Caleb. He kept his expression neutral. Fine, Emily said. Good night, grandmother. Rose stood. She looked at Caleb. Thank you, she said. For Patterson. For the Garrison route. For everything. She paused. Thomas would have liked you. Rose, he said. She waited. I'm sorry about what Victor did to the people in your valley, he said. I'm sorry it took this long for someone to come at it properly. She looked at him for a moment. You're here now, she said. That counts. She went to her room. Emily and Caleb sat at the table. The common room was quiet now, a few other travelers at the far end, not close enough to hear. She's right, Emily said. About Patterson. About you having more standing than you think. She's right about a lot of things, he said. She's right about all of it, Emily said. That's the thing about her that's taken me 26 years to fully understand. She's not usually wrong. She paused. She's occasionally inconvenient. She's occasionally infuriating. She never tells you things in the order you need them, and she manages you constantly, and you never realize it until it's over. But she's not usually wrong. Caleb almost smiled. Emily looked at him. You almost smiled, she said. I didn't, he said. You almost did, she said. I saw it. He looked at the fire. Tell me about the valley, he said. Before Victor. What it was like. She looked at him. Why? She said. Because you're fighting for something specific, he said. Not just the land. Something specific that the land represents. I want to understand what that is. She was quiet for a moment, then she talked. She told him about the river property in summer, not the visual of it, not the way it looked, but the way it felt to be there, the way the water sounded, and the way that sound organized the whole day. She told him about her grandfather Thomas, and the way he had managed the property with the specific dignity of someone who understood that land was not a resource to be extracted, but a system to be maintained, and who had transmitted that understanding to Rose, and through Rose to Emily. She told him about the neighbors in the valley before Victor's systematic pressure had changed the quality of community there, the way things worked between farms when the water was shared, and the difficulty was shared, and the seasons were survived collectively, rather than competed over. She told him about the summer she was 12, when the creek flooded, and took out 2 farms south fencing, and every farm in the valley sent someone to help repair it, because that was what you did, because that was what the valley was. And now, Caleb said, now people are afraid of each other, she said. They don't know who's reporting to Victor and who isn't. They don't know who's received an offer and is considering it and who's been threatened into silence. The community that used to manage things collectively is now managing things alone, because alone is safer than trusting the wrong person. What Victor destroyed, Caleb said, wasn't just individual properties. He destroyed the trust, Emily said. The specific trust that makes a community something more than a collection of separate farms. She paused. Grandmother's documentation isn't just about the property acquisitions. It's about what those acquisitions did to how people relate to each other. She has letters from 3 families who described watching their neighbors sell and wondering if the neighbors had been bought to report on them. She paused. That's what fear does to a community. It makes everyone suspect everyone else. Caleb thought about that. He thought about what restoration looked like in that context. Not just the property, the trust. If the territorial proceeding succeeds, he said, if Victor's acquisitions are unwound and the families get their properties back, is the trust repairable? Emily was quiet. I think so, she said. Not immediately, not easily. But if people understand what actually happened, that the suspicion was manufactured, that the isolation was deliberate, that they were made to feel alone by someone who needed them to feel alone so they couldn't act together. She paused. I think knowing the truth about how it worked is the beginning of undoing it. The documentation, Caleb said. The documentation makes the mechanism visible, she said. 7 years of evidence of how he did it. Not just that he did it, but specifically how. The banking irregularities, the reputation management, the legal filings, the way he sequenced the pressure to prevent people from organizing. She paused. When that's visible, it stops being a story of everyone failing separately and starts being a story of everyone being attacked deliberately by the same person. That's different, Caleb said. Very different, she said. Failing separately is shame. Being attacked deliberately is something you can organize against. He looked at her. You've thought about this a lot, he said. Grandmother has thought about this a lot, she said. I've been absorbing it for the last week. She looked at the fire. What do you want when this is over? She said. You didn't fully answer earlier. He looked at the fire. I told you I don't know, he said. You said you knew you didn't want to go back up the mountain, she said. And you said you knew you needed to be in the same place as your daughter. She paused. That sounds like someone who knows what they want. They just haven't said it specifically. He was quiet. A place, he said. Not the mountain. Somewhere with people in it. He paused. Somewhere that needs what I can do. I know how to manage land. I know how to read situations. I know how to be useful to things that matter. He looked at the fire. I want to be somewhere that uses those things for something real. Emily looked at him. The valley needs people who know how to manage land and read situations, she said carefully. He looked at her. After this is over, she said. After the filing and the proceeding and whatever happens, the valley is going to need people who know what healthy land management looks like, who know what a community that trusts itself looks like, who can model that for people who have forgotten. She paused. Grandmother has been talking about what restoration looks like. She said the hardest part will be the beginning when people don't yet believe the threat is gone and need to see someone behaving as though it is. Someone who acts like the valley is worth trusting again, he said. Yes, Emily said. He was quiet. That's not a coincidence, he said. That you're telling me this. No, she said. It's not. He looked at her directly. Are you recruiting me? He said. I'm telling you what's true, she said. What you do with it is your choice. He held her gaze. She held his. In the morning, Webb's reply was waiting. He read it in the telegraph room before he told anyone. Webb had written Morgan. Good to hear from you. Garrett is in Laramie. He runs a small goods operation near the stage depot. He told me 2 years back he'd been waiting for something to happen about what Hale did to him. He said if anyone came looking with a real case to tell them he was there. I think a real case has arrived. Give him my name when you go. Caleb folded the wire. He held it for a moment. Then he went to breakfast. Rose was already at the table. Emily was beside her. They had coffee and were talking not about Victor or the filing or anything related to the immediate situation. They were talking about a recipe. Rose was describing something her mother had made in Ohio, and Emily was asking questions with the specific interest of someone who is going to try to make the thing being described. He sat down. He put the wire on the table. Rose picked it up. She read it. She was very still for a moment. Then she set the wire down and looked at the fire. He waited, she said. 2 years. He told Webb he was waiting for someone to come with a real case. He knew someone would eventually, Caleb said. He trusted that, Rose said. Yes, he said. She was quiet for a long moment. Thomas used to say, she said, that you don't build something real in secret. You build it in the open where people can see it, and you trust that the people who need to see it will find it. She paused. Garrett didn't hide. He went to Laramie and opened a goods operation and told Webb where he was. He was visible. He was waiting to be found. He'll speak to the case, Caleb said. The letter and the testimony together. It ends it, Rose said. Not a question. Yes, Caleb said. It ends it. Emily was looking at her grandmother. Rose picked up her coffee. She looked at Caleb. "We need to stop in Laramie," she said. "Laramie is on the Territorial Road," he said. "It adds 4 hours." "I know," she said. "We stop in Laramie." "It takes us into Cheyenne tomorrow evening instead of afternoon," he said. "Patterson will still be there tomorrow evening," she said. "Yes," he said. "Then we stop in Laramie," she said. She drank her coffee. She looked at Emily. "Rose," Emily said. "Don't," Rose said. "I wasn't going to argue," Emily said. "I know you weren't," Rose said. "I'm telling you not to look at me the way you're looking at me." She set down the cup. "I have been building to this moment for 7 years. I am not going to arrive in Cheyenne without Garrett's testimony when Garrett is 4 hours out of my way and willing to give it." She looked at Caleb. "Are we agreed?" "We're agreed," he said. "Good," she said. "Then let's not waste the morning." They left within the hour. The Territorial Road was different from the mountain trail in every way that mattered. Wider, more traveled, the specific quality of a road that was maintained for the purpose of connecting places rather than navigating terrain. They moved faster. The horses were rested from the night at the way station and responded to the easier conditions with the willingness of animals that have been working hard and are glad of the change. Caleb rode with a different feeling than he had carried on the mountain. The mountain had been about survival and navigation and keeping 2 women alive and ahead of pursuit. That had required a specific kind of attention, outward, constant, responsive. This was different. This had the quality of approach, of something moving toward completion. He thought about Patterson's reply. "You have more standing than you think." He thought about 9 years. He thought about what it would mean to walk into the Territorial Land Office in Cheyenne with Rose's 7 years of documentation and Garrett's testimony and Patterson's introduction and Agnes Cole waiting on the other side of a filing desk. He thought about the man who died of summer fever. He thought about what Thomas used to say, "You do what you can do, and you trust that doing what you can do is enough." He thought about Margaret in Nebraska, 8 years old, sending drawings. He had been on the mountain for 9 years, telling himself he was not fit for the world, not safe for the world, not the kind of man who should be around people who depended on him. He had been on the mountain for 3 days, and he had guided 2 women through a secondary ridge crossing, wired an old contact who responded in 20 minutes, located a key witness, and arranged access to the right person at the Territorial Land Office. Either his 9 years of assessment had been wrong or the situation had changed. He thought it was probably the former. He thought that was probably what Rose had been telling him since the first night at the fire. He thought Rose was not usually wrong. Laramie came up in the early afternoon. They found the stage depot. They found the goods operation near it. The man behind the counter when they walked in was in his late 50s, compact and careful looking, with the specific manner of a man who has been watching for something for a long time and is trying not to show that he's still watching. He looked at Caleb. He looked at Rose. He looked at the bag in Rose's hands. "Webb sent us," Caleb said. The man behind the counter was very still. "Garrett," Rose said. "My name is Rose Whitmore. I have your letter, and 7 years of documentation, and I am filing at the Territorial Land Office in Cheyenne tomorrow morning." Garrett looked at her for a long moment. "I've been waiting," he said. "I know," she said. He came out from behind the counter. He sat down at the small table near the window. He looked at Rose with the expression of a man who has been carrying something for a long time and has just seen the place to set it down. "Tell me what you need," he said. Rose sat across from him. She opened the bag. She put the letter on the table between them. The letter he had left under her door 3 years ago in the night when he left the valley that Victor Hale had made too small for an honest man. He looked at his own handwriting. He picked it up. He read it. He set it down. "I'll say everything in this letter," he said. "And more. I've had 3 years to remember more." "In writing," Rose said. "Signed, in front of witnesses." "In writing," he said. "Signed, whatever you need." Emily produced paper from her bag. She set it in front of Garrett. He picked up the pen. He began to write. Caleb stood back and watched. He watched an old woman who had built a case for 7 years sit across from the man whose testimony completed it, and he watched the pen move across the paper, and he thought about what was happening in that room, and what it would do, and what it meant. It meant tomorrow. Tomorrow, they walked into the territorial land office with everything that was needed organized and complete and sufficient, and filed it in front of Agnes Cole, who did not like delay tactics, and Victor Hale, who had spent 7 years controlling information in a valley he had convinced himself he owned, would understand for the first time that information he did not control had been building against him. He was not in Red Hollow Valley. He was in Laramie. He was watching an act of ordinary courage being completed at a table near a window. He thought about the mountain he had lived on for 9 years. He thought about what Thomas had built on the river property. He thought about Margaret's drawings. He thought it's time. Garrett's written statement took 2 hours. Not because he was slow. He wrote with the focused efficiency of a man who had been rehearsing this account in his head for 3 years and knew exactly what he needed to say. It took 2 hours because Rose kept asking questions, and each question produced another section of testimony that went deeper than what Garrett had initially put down, and each section went into the record with the specific precision of someone who understood that every additional verifiable detail was another point that Victor Hale's lawyers would have to contend with rather than simply dismiss. Caleb stood near the door and watched. He watched Rose manage the session the way she managed everything, with the patient, methodical attention of a woman who had been building toward this moment for 7 years and was not going to rush the final assembly. He watched Garrett move through his account, the relief in it visible in the way his posture changed as he wrote the specific unburdening of someone who has been carrying a truth in isolation and is finally handing it to a place where it can be used. At one point, an hour in, Garrett stopped writing. He looked at Rose. "I should have come forward sooner," he said. Rose looked at him. "You came forward when you could," she said. "That's not the same as when I should have," he said. "No," she said. "It's not." She was quiet for a moment. "But you're here now, and what you're writing is accurate and complete, and it will do what it needs to do." She held his gaze. "That's what matters from this point forward." Garrett looked at the paper in front of him. He picked up the pen and kept writing. When it was done, he signed it. Emily witnessed it. Caleb witnessed it. Rose put it in the bag with the rest of the documentation, and the bag now contained everything she had been building for 7 years, complete, and the weight of it was not reduced by the completeness. If anything, it was more present because complete things have a different quality than things in progress. In progress, you can tell yourself there's more to come. Complete means this is what you have, and now you find out what it's worth. "Thank you," Rose said to Garrett. He nodded. Then he said, "What happens to the valley if the filing succeeds?" Rose looked at him. "The acquisitions that were made through fraudulent process will be challenged," she said. "The families that sold under duress will have the right to contest the terms." She paused. "It won't be immediate. The proceedings will take time. But the legal hold on my property will be lifted, and the pattern of fraud will be documented at the territorial level, and Victor Hale will no longer be able to operate the way he has been operating." "He'll lose his standing," Garrett said. "He'll lose the legal mechanisms that protect his standing," Rose said. "What he does with that is up to him." Garrett nodded slowly. "I'd like to come back," he said. "Eventually, when it's safe." "You'll be welcome," Rose said. "The valley needs people who know what it looked like before." They left Laramie in the early afternoon. They reached Cheyenne as the last of the November light was going, not dark yet, but close, the specific quality of early evening in late autumn when the sky holds light but doesn't commit to it. Patterson met them at the stage depot, which told Caleb that Patterson had either been watching for them or had good information about their timing, and either was consistent with the kind of man Patterson had always been. He was in his 60s now. He had been 40 when Caleb knew him. The years were on his face, the way years go on the face of someone who has spent them paying attention, not aged exactly, more settled. He looked at Caleb with the expression of a man seeing someone he expected but isn't certain how to greet. "Morgan," he said. "Patterson," Caleb said. They shook hands. Patterson looked at Rose and Emily. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "I sent a note to Agnes Cole this morning. She's expecting us tomorrow at 8. Rose looked at him. "You know of me," she said. "I know of the land," he said. "And I know of Victor Hale, which amounts to knowing of anyone Hale has decided to pressure." He paused. "I should say I retired from the territorial office 3 years ago, partly because of what I was watching happen with Hale's acquisitions and the ways the county was accommodating it. I was not in a position to address it from inside the office. I am in a better position from outside." Rose studied him. "You've been waiting for this too," she said. "I've been hoping for it," he said. "Waiting implies certainty. I wasn't certain someone would come with what was needed." "We have what's needed," Rose said. "I believe you," he said. He held out his hand for the bag. Rose held it for a moment. Then she gave it to him. He took it with both hands. He felt the weight of it. "Come inside," he said. "I want to go through this tonight before we see Cole tomorrow. I want to understand exactly what we have." They went inside. Patterson's house was what Caleb had expected from the man, organized, functional, with the particular quality of a space that has been lived in by someone who has clear standards for how things work and has kept to them for a long time. There was a desk in the front room covered with papers that Patterson cleared to make space for Rose's documentation. He went through it methodically. He did not comment while he read. He made occasional marks on a separate piece of paper, but he read without editorial and without the performative assessments of someone who wants you to see them doing good work. He read because the reading was necessary, and he was doing it. An hour in, he looked up. He looked at Rose. "The Garrett testimony," he said. "This is the critical piece. Everything else is pattern evidence. It establishes the method and the targets. Garrett's account establishes explicit direction. He's describing a conversation in which Hale stated what the consequences of non-compliance would be." "Yes," Rose said. "Where is Garrett now?" "Laramie," Caleb said. "He's willing to appear in person if the proceeding requires testimony." Patterson looked at Caleb. "You found him," he said. "He wasn't hidden," Caleb said. "He was waiting." Patterson nodded. He went back to the documentation. An hour later, he set the last paper down and looked at Rose. "This is sufficient," he said. Rose was very still. "To open the proceeding," she said. "To open the proceeding to freeze any pending county actions against your property and to trigger a territorial-level review of all Hale's acquisition activity going back 7 years," he said. "The pattern documentation alone establishes a territorial concern. The Garrett testimony makes it a criminal matter." Emily made a sound that was not quite a word. Rose did not make a sound. She sat with it. Caleb watched her sit with it and understood that she was feeling something that did not need to be performed. "He'll counterfile," Patterson said. "His lawyers in Cheyenne are good. They'll move immediately to introduce the competency question, and they'll try to have the documentation's provenance challenged." "Agnes Cole," Caleb said. "Agnes Cole does not move cases into procedural queues when the documentation doesn't warrant it," Patterson said. "She'll look at this and she'll make a decision in the room. She has that authority and she exercises it." He paused. "Hale's lawyers will object. She'll hear the objection. She'll deny it." Rose looked at him. "You sound certain," she said. "I worked with Cole for 12 years, Patterson said. "I am certain about how she handles this specific type of situation." He paused. "What I cannot promise you is the timeline for full resolution. The proceeding will open tomorrow. The outcome of that proceeding is months, possibly a year." "But the hold on my property," Rose said. "The hold on your property is lifted when the proceeding opens," Patterson said. "Because the hold is a county-level action, and the moment the territorial proceeding is active, county-level actions on the same matter are superseded." Rose closed her eyes, just for a moment. Then she opened them. "All right," she said. "Tomorrow at 8. Patterson looked at Caleb. "You're coming." he said. It was not a question. Yes, Caleb said. Patterson held his gaze for a moment. 9 years, he said. 9 years? Caleb agreed. You were right, Patterson said. About what happened on Gentry's ranch. I want to say that. I looked into it after you left. What you documented was accurate, and the man who died should not have died. Caleb was quiet. I know that, he said. I should have said it sooner, Patterson said. You're saying it now, Caleb said. Patterson nodded. They ate at Patterson's table, and Rose fell asleep in the chair afterward, which she did not argue about, which told Caleb how much the past 5 days had cost her. Emily covered her with a blanket and sat across from Caleb at the table. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow, he said. She looked at the documentation which Patterson had organized back into its bundle on the desk. She built that for 7 years, Emily said. Every document, every letter she kept, every note she made. She paused. She never told me she was doing it. She was always careful about keeping records, always precise about documentation. And I thought that was just who she was, how she managed things. It is who she is, Caleb said. I know, Emily said. But it was also this. It was always also this. She looked at her grandmother asleep in the chair. She was always planning to do something with it. She was waiting until it was complete. She paused. She waited until it was complete before she acted because she knew one attempt was all she would get. If she filed too early before it was sufficient, Hale's lawyers would find the gaps and she wouldn't be able to try again. She was right about that, Caleb said. She's usually right, Emily said. He almost smiled. She saw it. She did not comment on it this time. What do you do tomorrow? She said. After the filing. He looked at the desk. I have things to arrange, he said. What things? She said. He held her gaze. I need to write to Sarah's parents in Nebraska, he said. I need to tell them I'm coming off the mountain. Emily was very still. And then, she said. And then I need to go to Nebraska, he said. I need to meet my daughter. Emily looked at him. She's 8, he said. I've been corresponding with her grandparents for 7 years. I've been present in the only way I was available to be present. Now I'm available in more ways. You're going to Nebraska, she said. After Cheyenne, he said. Yes. And after Nebraska, she said. He looked at the desk. Your grandmother said the valley needs people, he said. People who know what healthy management looks like. Who can model that for people who have forgotten? Emily said nothing for a moment. She was not wrong, he said. She's usually right. Something moved in Emily's face. She'll be very pleased with herself, Emily said. When she hears this, she'll pretend not to be, but she will be. I know, he said. She planned this, Emily said. From the moment you opened the door, she was assessing what you could do and how you could be useful, and she arranged the conversation accordingly. I know that too, he said. Does it bother you? She said. He thought about it. No, he said. She arranged a conversation that produced a result that's true. The mechanism doesn't change the truth of the result. He paused. She needed to understand what I was before she could use what I was. That's not manipulation. That's practical wisdom. Emily looked at her grandmother. She would like to hear you say that, she said. Don't tell her I said that. She'll use it. I know, he said. The morning came with the particular clarity of winter in Cheyenne, cold and bright. The kind of light that made everything look more consequential than usual. Caleb was awake before the others, as he always was, and he stood outside Patterson's house in the cold morning and looked at the city around him. Not the mountain, not the isolation, but the city people moving at this early hour for their own reasons, the specific density of a place where people are going somewhere, and he felt something he had not felt in 9 years. He felt like he was in the right place. Not the right place geographically. The right place in relation to what he was supposed to be doing. The feeling of being pointed in the correct direction, which is different from the feeling of having arrived anywhere. He went back inside. He made coffee. Rose was already in the kitchen when he got there. She looked at the coffee. She sat down. He poured her a cup. She wrapped both hands around it the way she had done the first morning at the cabin. And he thought about that morning, the thin coat, and the shaking hands, and the clear eyes, and the 3 words she had said at his door. And he thought about how much had happened between that morning and this one. "Ready," he said. "I've been ready for 7 years," she said. He almost smiled. "I see it this time," she said. He looked at her. "The almost smile," she said. "Emily mentioned it. I've been watching for it." He said nothing. "You have a good face when you stop managing it," she said. Thomas had the same quality. He kept his face very controlled, and then something would get through and it was worth seeing. "Rose," he said. "I'm not being sentimental," she said. "I'm observing." "I know," he said. She drank her coffee. Emily came in, then Patterson. And at 8 in the morning, on a November day in Cheyenne, Wyoming Territory, 4 people walked into the Territorial Land Office. Agnes Cole was exactly what Caleb had expected from Patterson's description, and entirely different from what he had pictured. She was in her late 40s, precise and direct, with the specific manner of someone who has spent 20 years making decisions that other people tried to appeal, and has developed a clear relationship with the difference between an appeal that has merit and one that does not. She shook Rose's hand first. She looked at the bag. "Show me," she said. They sat at a long table in her office, and Rose laid out the documentation in the order she and Patterson had organized the night before. Cole read without comment. She read everything, not skimming, reading with the focused attention of a woman who understood what she was looking at and was not going to miss anything. An hour into the review, her door opened. A younger man came in. He whispered something to Cole. Cole looked up. "Tell them to wait," she said. The man left. She looked at Rose. "Hale's lawyers are in the building," she said. "They filed this morning. A competency petition against you at the territorial level." The room was very still. Cole looked at Rose. "They must have known you were coming," she said. "He has a contact here," Rose said. "I was told as much before we left the valley." Cole nodded once. She looked at the documentation. The petition argues that you lack the competency to file a territorial complaint, and that any documentation collected under your direction should be considered inadmissible on those grounds, Cole said. "It's a standard delay tactic. I've seen it used 4 times in the last 3 years, twice by Hale's lawyers specifically." "Can it succeed?" Emily said. Cole looked at her. "Not with what's on this table," she said. She looked at the Garrett testimony. She looked at the pattern documentation. She looked at the original deed. "Not when what's on this table is what's on this table." She stood up. "I'm going to accept this filing now, before I see the petition, because the petition's validity depends in part on whether a legitimate filing already exists." Rose looked at her. "If my filing is accepted before the petition is reviewed," she began, "then the petition has to address an existing territorial proceeding rather than prevent one," Cole said. "The standards are different, significantly different." She picked up the pen. She accepted the filing. She dated and signed the acceptance form. She handed Rose the receipt copy. Rose took it. She held it. Cole came back around the table. "I'm going to see Hale's lawyers now," she said. "I'm going to inform them that the filing they were trying to prevent has been accepted. I'm going to tell them that the petition will be reviewed against the active proceeding rather than as a substitute for it." She paused at the door. "This will not end their efforts. They'll find other angles." "I know," Rose said. "But this particular angle is closed," Cole said. She left. The room was quiet. Emily put her hand on her grandmother's arm. Rose looked at the receipt in her hands. She did not cry. She did not perform the emotion that was clearly present. She sat with it the way she sat with everything directly, completely, without looking away from what it was. 7 years, she said. Finally, quietly. "Yes," Caleb said. "Thomas would have—" She stopped. She tried again. Thomas would have said something specific, she said. He had a way of finding the right sentence. I've been trying to think what he would say about this moment. She paused. I can't find it. I've been trying for 5 days, and I can't find the specific thing he would say. Emily put her arm around her grandmother. Rose let her. I think, Caleb said carefully, that the right thing to say about this moment might be the thing he already said. The thing you told me at the fire. Rose looked at him. You do what you can do, Caleb said, and you trust that doing what you can do is enough. Rose held his gaze. Yes, she said. That's it. Patterson, who had been standing near the window, cleared his throat. We should let Cole handle the lawyers without an audience, he said. And there are a number of procedural steps that will need attention over the next few weeks. I'd like to start walking you through those. Yes, Rose said. She stood. She looked at Caleb. Thank you, she said. He shook his head. You built the case, he said. You kept the documentation. You knew where it needed to go, and you got there. I knew a mountain route. You knew considerably more than a mountain route, she said. Rose. Don't argue with me, she said. I'm 70 years old, and I'm right, and you know I'm right. He looked at her. Something in his face got through that he wasn't managing. There it is, she said. And she was satisfied. She followed Patterson out of the room. Emily stayed. She looked at Caleb. Nebraska, she said. Nebraska, he said. And then the valley, she said. He held her gaze. If the valley will have me, he said. The valley will have you, she said. I will personally ensure it. He looked at her. Is that a promise? He said. That's a certainty, she said, which is different from a promise. A promise is something you commit to. A certainty is something that's already true, and you just haven't caught up to it yet. He held her gaze. You sound like your grandmother, he said. I've been listening to her for 26 years, she said. It would be surprising if some of it hadn't gotten through. He almost smiled. She saw it. She smiled back. And that was the moment. Not dramatic, not announced, not surrounded by anything more significant than a territorial land office in Cheyenne on a November morning that Caleb Morgan understood that the next chapter of his life had already begun and had begun some time ago, and that he had simply been moving through it without using the correct name for it. He had been calling it helping two strangers get to Cheyenne. The correct name was coming back to the world. The months that followed were not simple. Nothing about what happened in Red Hollow Valley in the spring after the Cheyenne filing was simple, and Caleb would not have claimed otherwise to anyone who asked. The territorial proceeding moved at the speed of legal proceedings deliberately, with the specific pace of a process designed to be thorough rather than fast. Victor Hale's lawyers were exactly as good as Patterson had said, and they used every legitimate angle available to them, which were fewer than they had been the week before the filing, and fewer still as each challenge failed in front of Cole's office. Victor Hale himself did not respond the way powerful men often responded to the beginning of their accountability. He did not rage, did not make public statements, did not attempt the dramatic counteroffensive. He went quiet. He instructed his lawyers. He waited to see what the proceeding produced. Caleb thought that was more frightening than a man who raged, but also ultimately less effective because a man who waits to see what happens has already ceded the initiative to the people who are making things happen. Rose was back at the river property by February. The territorial proceeding had superseded the county hold, as Cole had said it would, and Rose walked back onto her land on a cold February morning, with Emily beside her and Caleb one step behind. Not in front, because it was her land and her return, but present, because present was what was needed. She stood at the river. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Hello," to the river, to the land, to the 20 years she and Thomas had built here. Emily put her arm around her. Caleb stood back and gave them the moment. He had gotten back from Nebraska 2 weeks before. Margaret was 8 years old, and she had her mother's eyes and her father's way of looking at things directly and without flinching, And when he walked into her grandparents' house in Nebraska, and she looked at him across the room, she had not run to him or stayed distant. She had walked up to him at the pace of someone who had decided to approach something important with appropriate care. "You're my father," she had said. "Yes," he had said. "You live on a mountain," she had said. "I used to," he had said. She had looked at him for a long moment. "Are you going to keep living on a mountain?" she had said. "No," he had said. "Where are you going to live?" she had said. "I'm still deciding," he had said. "But somewhere you can visit, somewhere that's real." She had thought about this. Then she had said, "The drawings I sent you. Did you keep them?" "Everyone," he had said. She had nodded. "Good," she had said. And that had been the beginning of something that was not simple and would not be fast, but was real in the specific way that things are real when they are built on honesty, rather than what you wished was true. He had ridden back to Wyoming with more in him than he had left with. Not lighter. More. The valley changed slowly, which was the correct pace for something that had been damaged slowly. The families that had sold under duress were in various stages of the process of contesting the terms of their sales. Some would succeed and get their properties back. Some would succeed in receiving fair compensation. Some would find the legal process took too long and had to be concluded by agreement rather than ruling. None of it was clean. All of it was better than what had existed before. The trust came back differently than it had left. It had left because people stopped believing they could depend on their neighbors without risk. It came back because people started seeing that their neighbors had in fact been on their side all along, that the isolation had been manufactured, that the suspicion had been a tool that the community they had mourned was still there waiting under the fear. It came back one conversation at a time. One fence repaired together. One season survived with shared labor. One meal brought to a neighbor who was struggling in the old way, the way the valley had operated before Victor Hale had decided that a community that trusted itself was harder to pressure than a community that didn't. Caleb managed land in the valley, not his own, not yet. He worked with Patterson on arrangements that were making their way through the property process, but in the meantime, he made himself useful in the specific way he had told Emily he wanted to be useful, the man who knew what healthy management looked like, who could show by doing what the valley could be, rather than only saying it. He rode the same land he had once avoided. He sat at the same tables where the community gathered. He was not the man who had been the mountain ghost. That man had been a version of himself that was the answer to a very specific question. How do you survive when you have lost everything and believe yourself responsible? And that question had been answered, and the version could be retired. Rose found him at a fence line one morning in April. Spring in the valley was the specific evidence of the argument she had been making for 7 years, that what looked finished could recover, that what had been damaged by years of wrong management could respond to the right attention and produce something worth the waiting. The grass was coming in. She stood at the fence and looked at the land. "Thomas used to stand here," she said. Caleb stood beside her. "He used to stand here and say the same thing every spring," she said. "What?" Caleb said. "He would say it came back." She paused. "Every year after a hard winter when the first real green started showing. Just that. It came back. As if it were surprising even after 20 years. As if the land's willingness to return was something to be grateful for rather than assumed." Caleb looked at the grass. "It came back," he said. Rose smiled. It was not a small smile. It was the specific full smile of a woman who has spent 7 years keeping faith with something and has arrived at the morning when she can see it was right to keep faith. "Yes," she said. It did. Emily was behind them. She had appeared without announcement, which Caleb had learned was how Emily arrived at things quietly, without requiring a moment of arrival, simply present when she was needed. She stood on his other side. The three of them stood at the fence in the April morning and looked at the land that had come back. Nobody said anything for a while. Then Rose said to nobody in particular, "I knew when I knocked on that door that whoever opened it would be what was needed. I didn't know specifically, but I knew." That's a lot to believe about a door, Caleb said. I've been right before, Rose said. You've been right about everything, Emily said. Not everything, Rose said. But most things. She paused. The important things. She walked back toward the river property. Emily stood beside Caleb. She knew, Emily said. From the moment you opened the door. She was assessing you from the first sentence. I know, Caleb said. And you let her, Emily said. He looked at her. I was lonely for 9 years, he said. When someone pays that kind of attention to what you actually are, rather than what they need you to be, you don't stop them. Emily looked at the river. She needed you, she said. The route, the contact, the legal thinking. Yes, he said. But not only that, she said. He held her gaze. Not only that, he said. The valley was alive around them. The creek ran clean from the spring melt. The cattle were in the south pasture of the river property, where Rose had moved them last week, and they moved with the ease of animals on land that was being managed correctly. Somewhere down the road, at one of the neighboring properties, someone was working a fence, the sound of it carrying in the clear April air, the sound of repair of maintenance, of someone taking care of something worth taking care of. Caleb had knocked on a door 9 years ago and found a valley that was shutting itself down. A woman had knocked on his door in November and given him the thing he had spent 9 years without understanding he needed. Not a purpose. He had always known his purpose, not a cause. He had always known what was right, a reason. A reason to stop counting the years and start building something with them. The cowboy who had buried himself in the mountains had not been heartless. He had been a man who loved deeply enough that losing what he loved had convinced him the solution was to stop. Rose had knocked on his door and reminded him that stopping was not the solution, that the heart that had loved and lost was still the heart that could love and build and stand between someone who was wrong and someone who was right and make it matter. That was the secret the town of Red Hollow had been telling wrong for 9 years. His secret was never his past. His secret was that he was still capable of everything his past had tried to make him believe he wasn't. And the old woman who knocked on his door in the dark of a November mountain, who had clear eyes even when she was barely standing, had known it before he did. Some truths take 9 years to find you. Some people knock on a door in the dark and change everything with 3 words. Just one night. And the answer to those 3 words given freely without knowing why turns out to be the answer to 9 years of the wrong question. The answer was yes. And yes, it